Saludos. Welcome once again to another edition of the Boxing Commentaries with El Dude. Here to talk about boxing. Just throw my 2 punches in, man. The topic of tonight is how the WBC president announced that David Benavidez officially ducked Canelo. And a little bit more on what you're talking about how the WBC president also talked about how David Benavidez is also responsible for stripping Bivol for his WBC title. We're also going to talk about how David Benavidez is cutting the line, now is considered to be the new email champion, and at the same time is pursuing to be the 2-time email champion. Well, if you guys haven't heard, Mauricio Suleiman, the president of the WBC sanctioning body, he literally came out and said, I'm going to drop a video and I'm going to title it The Mandatory Contender Rule. And he's explaining basically what happened with David Benavidez and Canelo and what's happening with Artur Beterbiev and Dimitri Bivol, that particular fight, how it's not, being disputed for an undisputed title, right? So,
reviewing what Mauricio Suleiman basically said regarding the mandatory status, how it works at the WBC, no surprises, old school OG rules, These rules are implemented to protect the fighter, and so we're going to talk about that, So we're going to be talking about that. So, welcome back, So it is what it is. So we are talking about how the WBC president announced that David Benavidez basically ducked Canelo. He was talking about how, as we all know, the truth always comes out at the end. David Benavidez, he ducked the mandatory versus Canelo after defeating Caleb Plant. He was pretty much instructed that he was going to be mandated to fight Canelo, and he was given a date for March of 2024 because a fight against Canelo was taking place on September of 24 of that same year, right? So Samson Lukowicz, David Benavidez's own manager, he literally said in an interview at Pro Box TV, he literally said, that Canelo had crossed the street. He signed a 3-fight deal against the PBC. Both first and second fight were against both Charlos, the twins, and the third fight was most likely going to be Benavidez. That's what was told, and that's what it was. Why Canelo fought. Why Canelo had signed against the PBC, right, to get Benavidez in September, but he also wanted both the Charlos back to back because it was going to be good business, right? Fighting the twins back to back. Both at that time were champions. One was undisputed, the other one undefeated middleweight WBC champion. You know what I mean? And so it was good business. It was good timing. Unfortunately, one of the brothers had a personal fallout, and the other brother did step in, and it was it turned out for the best, in my opinion. You know what I mean? We got to see Romel Charlo against Canelo, undisputed versus undisputed. You have one smaller fighter fighting a bigger fighter, like Charlo. Canelo, the smaller fighter, fighting a bigger fighter in Charlo. But it was kind of funny how they twisted the narrative. That Canelo's fighting a smaller guy. And then when you look at the images, you see that Charlo physically is bigger than Canelo. It's just the way they spun it. The way they their agendas, right? Just to hate on Canelo, right? Instead of giving Canelo props, the smaller fighter moving up, or the smaller fighter with more experience fighting at the heavier weights, Because remember, Canelo started at a lower weight class than Charlo, right? It's just that Canelo went beyond what Charlo ever accomplished, and just despite being the smaller fighter, but they made it seem like he's fighting smaller guys. It's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Just the narrative is ridiculous, right? It's just to discredit Canelo. It's just to fallacious claims. Maybe because he's Mexican, it could be racial. some racist shit. It's just I don't know what. If you were to ask me, if I were to break it down scientifically and give you my number one reason why Canelo gets all this hate, jealousy, envy, all this criticism, when he's basically outshining, outperforming, out hustling, I mean, outworking any other fighter currently in the sport of boxing. You know what I mean? And like literally, like last year, what did he do? He fought two prime undisputed fighters, right? Munguia and Berlanga, two undisputed. I'm sorry, two undefeated fighters, bro, in their prime, young undefeated fighters, bro, mandatories, right? And then what happens because it's Canelo? They try to make these fighters look like they ain't shit, but give these two fighters, put them on a resume on any other fighter, that's a good resume. You know, imagine Berlanga. I'm sorry, imagine Benavidez having uh, both Berlanga and Munguia on his resume that he defeated them both. I mean, and the same year back to back. I mean, come on, bro. Those are great wins, bro. And you got to look at Canelo size fighting giants, bro. He's literally fighting younger, hungry lions. You know what I mean? Who are undefeated, known to brawl, known to have power to knock you out, and they're coming to win and shit, bro. And and it's just yeah, no, but Canelo's the bigger guy, right? So so yeah, so so why am I talking about Canelo and it's just because what he does, bro, right? So Benavidez' own manager is saying, hey, look, Canelo joined the PBC. He's going to fight both Charlos back to back. Both fighters are bigger than Canelo. When you size them up, it just again, it looks like Canelo's fighting two giants back to back, and it's good on business, good on paper. The one brother avenging the other brother's loss. If that's what it was just good business. One brother had a fallout, and so they brought Munguia in. Right? They brought Munguia to replace that second uh, fight that Canelo had under contract with the PBC. And remember that third fight was supposed to be against Benavidez in September, according to Benavidez' own manager, Samson Lukowicz. He literally said that Canelo had signed with the PBC, uh, and he signed the three-fight deal. That third fight deal included Benavidez for September of 2024. Now, back to the main topic of the night. So you have Mauricio Suleiman, making a video. He's pretty much tired of all this shenanigans. He's tired of all this bullshit, bro. He's tired of all the lies. He's tired of all this false accusations that are accusing the WBC of doing this funny business or favoritism. Why do they do it with this guy and why don't they do it with that guy? Well, it's totally false. It's just bullshit. When you look at the history of the WBC, uh, they they're very strict, bro. They're just playing according to the rules, right? According to the rules, there's nothing special. There's nothing different. It's just that when you're talking about one particular fighter, these lies and accusations come out, and it's just it makes me laugh and shit, right? So Mauricio Suleiman, he says, hey, look, when you become the mandatory, it takes about 6 months, 6 months just to rent the venue, just to get everything on contract on paper, the security, the engineers, for the networks, all that shit takes about 6 months to get it done on paper. Now you got to give the fighters an additional 6 months for them at the most, or at average, you give them no more than 6 months to prepare for a fight for the training camp. So that's what the WBC is very strict on, and very clear that once you become the mandated fighter, you got 1 year to prepare for the fight. And when that year comes up, you're officially going to be given the opportunity to negotiate for the fight. And if you can't negotiate for the fight, it goes to purse bid. And if one fighter refuses to go to purse bid, the fighter gets stripped, and the challenger takes the title, just like that. Those are the rules. It's always happened, right? We saw how the WBC was pressuring Canelo to fight Golovkin at one point for the trilogy before pandemic. And so Canelo Alvarez was refusing. The WBC threatened Canelo to strip him from his title. That was very clear. They said, "We're going to strip you if you don't fight Golovkin. We're going to strip you. You have to fight him, and we're not going to allow you to fight anybody else under the representation of WBC champion." Right? And what did Canelo do? He vacated the title. He literally dropped the title. He vacated the title because he was pursuing the fight against Demetrius Andre for undisputed at 160 for the middleweight undisputed title at that particular moment in history, right? And so yeah, Canelo can't do whatever he wants to do. He can't just fight whoever he wants to fight. He's always being pressured, of fighting this guy or that guy, and then you got these narratives that also pop up, that play into effect. You understand what I'm saying? So you have for example, um, to stay on track, right? So Mauricio Suleiman is saying it takes 1 year. It takes 1 year to get this fight done. So in this case, it's Canelo's the champion. Benavidez is declared the mandatory, and as the mandatory, he's given a date for March 2024, and he doesn't show up. What does he do before the date? He asks to fight other fighters, and he's granted these opportunities. The WBC is very lenient with him, and they allow him to fight Demetrius Andre in between the mandatory status. They also allow him to move up and fight Javosdik at the light heavyweight, and they allowed him to get an extension to come back down and fight Canelo. They allowed him to get a second extension to make up his mind to fight Canelo. So they're very lenient with him, right? So the WBC is very, very lenient. So it's it's kind of baffles me. It makes me laugh how they say how the WBC caters to Canelo when it seems how they just keep catering to Benavidez, right? So they just keep pressuring. Um, it's just the rules they keep pressuring for the rules to be enforced, right? So like I said, at one point the WBC they were stripping Canelo. Canelo beat him to the punch. He said, "You're not firing me. I quit." He basically pulled that move before the pandemic. They wanted to fight Golovkin, and that you guys know the rest of the story, right? So IBF has also stripped Canelo in the past. So yeah, Canelo can't just fight whoever he wants. He's been stripped, right? And technically speaking, the WBC stripped him. The WBC technically stripped him. It's just Canelo made a whole show out of it, saying, "No, you didn't strip me. I just vacated my title." It's the same shit, I mean, they basically told him, you know, you know, either fight for it or give it up. You know what I mean? It's plain and simple. So they gave you an ultimatum. So if they give you an ultimatum and you come out and say, "No, I vacate my title," you know, let's not forget the ultimatum. The ultimatum is the key factor here, right? The WBC is technically stripping Canelo. So Canelo can't just do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And Mauricio Suleiman is very, very clear on this. You know what I mean? So he's letting everybody know, look, it takes 1 year, but when that year comes up, it's going to go to purse bid. And if it doesn't go to purse bid, we're going to strip the champion, get the challenge of the title, and then so on, right? So now, when we're looking at Benavidez and Canelo, Benavidez, once again, like I was mentioning, they've been very, very lenient with him, very lenient with him when it comes to WBC and Dave Benavidez. The WBC has been lenient in so many ways. And Dave Benavidez clearly said he doesn't want to fight Canelo. He vacated his position as a mandatory fighter before the March 2024 due date that he was scheduled to be assigned as a mandatory fighter against Canelo, right? So, and this is Mauricio Suleiman, the president of WBC sanctioning body. He's literally telling the whole world, why the fuck are you blaming me when it's this motherfucker right here, David Benavidez, refusing to fight Canelo, right? How is that my fault? And it's kind of weird how sometimes you got some certain fans, hating on Canelo or the WBC because this is happening. It's you can't. It's why I just uh I look at the situation and I say it's clearly David Benavidez's fault. We're not enforcing it as mandatory, right? He had the shot. He could have stripped him, but, and instead of saying, "Yeah, David, you had your shot, bro. You talked all this shit. You talked the talk, but when it came to do the walk, Holmes, you backed off." But instead of saying that, people go, "Oh, Canelo, Canelo's ducking." But it's like, and you got to ask yourself, why is that? If it's clear as day, bro, that David ducked the mandatory. If it's clear as day, and even his most loyal, when it comes to David Benavidez, even his most loyal fans, they said it themselves. Yeah, he looked bad by ducking the mandatory. Yeah, they said it themselves. I got one. As a matter of fact, everybody who knows boxing and who's associated with social media, everybody knows that David Benavidez has fans as well, diehard fans, just like any other fighter. And there's this one diehard fan, possibly David Benavidez' number one fan in the entire world. Right? His name is Mirage. Mirage is very, very popular on social media for being a David Benavidez supporter, uh, the number one fan in his fan base. And even he himself said it at Black and Brown Boxing. He said, "Yeah, man, he ducked Canelo. He avoided the mandatory. It made him look bad. That he had an opportunity and he let it go." I remember Raider from LA, he was right there, and Raider was like, "Whoa!" And I was like, "Wait a minute, wait." The number one fan, he's literally saying it. So it's clear as day, right? But when people forget, or they tend to, not say those things, not acknowledge them. Like Mirage, at least at one point acknowledged it, right? Like, you got to ask yourself, why don't the majority of the haters, acknowledge? Because you got to give it to Mirage. You know what I mean? Uh, he just basically falls into the category as the number one fan. But then when you look at the other population, it's like, why? Why do you continue to ignore the facts? Why do you continue to hate on Canelo and blame him? And you got to break it down, bro, and you got to roll the dice on it, right? You got to call it. Call a spade a spade. It's possibly racism. It's possibly racism. Why? Because the torch has been passed to a Mexican, and right now, a Mexican is just the king of boxing. And if we rewind, the timeline, previous to Canelo, it was Floyd Mayweather, and previous to Floyd Mayweather was another Mexican, right? A Mexican American, De La Hoya. Previous to De La Hoya, you know, uh, you had like Chavez, and then Mike Tyson, and then previous to them, you had like Sugar Ray Leonard, right? And Hagler, and you started saying Duran, and previous to them, you could keep going back, bro. You had fighters like 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 Napoles. You had fighters, that stood out, amongst the greatest. Willie Pep, keep going back and shit, bro. Rocky Marciano. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? So the torch has been passed, throughout time. But right now, just for whatever reason, they're hating on a Mexican, bro. Why won't you acknowledge it? Why would you keep blaming Canelo when it's Benavidez who ducked the mandatory, right? So yeah, bro. So that's one of the topics. The WC president announced that David Benavidez ducked Canelo. Clearly stated that. Now, when it comes to David Benavidez, is also responsible for stripping Bivol. I mean, I said it before, bro. It's out there in my videos. I said it in other channels, bro. I predicted it. I said, look, man, Benavidez don't fool me. He reminds me of Andre. He just talks shit, cloud chases, perfect timing, knows who to call out when they're busy with the fight or when either he's busy with the fight. It just reminded me a lot of Andre. You know what I mean? And I said this years ago, bro, years ago, and I've been saying it. You know what I mean? And I predicted it. I literally predicted it. I said David Benavidez is gonna, when the time comes, and he's gonna be ready to fight Canelo with the mandatory. He's gonna pull some kind of injury shit or some excuse, and he's gonna pull out of the mandatory. It was all talking, and I predicted it. And then I said he's gonna go after the trilogy. I'm sorry, he's gonna go after Bivol or Bitter Beef, knowing that there's a possibility it's gonna be a trilogy. And this is before they even fought their first fight. Even, I said I predicted it. I give you my word of a man. I'll just go to my videos, and there's a like about boxing archives out there. I said it myself. I said, hey, look, I don't believe in David Benavidez. I just don't believe in him. He reminds me of Andre. He's going to uh, be forced to enforce that mandatory fight. He's going to vacate, and sure enough, it did. And I said, then he's going to go and possibly fight, try to fight Bitter Beef or Bivol, knowing that there's a possibility that because there was talks that they were going to get that first fight. And I said to myself, well, it's going to be for undisputed. Most likely, it's just going to be a rematch. There's going to be a rematch. There's a high possibility that it's going to go 1-1, and the trilogy is going to settle the score, right? So like it's common sense. It's just fucking common sense, right? So I'm thinking in my book, I'm thinking like I'm predicting Benavidez is going to clutch his Canelo all the way through, and then when he's forced to fight that mandatory, he's going to vacate. Exactly what he did. And then he's going to go after the trilogy, and that's exactly what he did. He went after the trilogy, knowing that he's not going to get that fight. And I said, then when the push comes to shove, and he's supposed to fight for the undisputed against either Bivol or Bitter Beef, he's not going to fight them, and he's going to vacate that title, and he's going to move up to claim that he's chasing Gilberto Ramirez, and he's going to try to work his way up in the rankings. You know what I mean? And then eventually he'll fight either Ramirez or a Bitter Beef or I just said it's just gonna. And that's exactly what I said. Look, it's exactly what's happening. It is exactly what's happening. I predicted it, but it's common sense because he's not fooling anybody that is logical, right? And I got no reason to hate on Benavidez, right? Like personally, I just don't like his style because he reminds me of some grimy, shady motherfuckers who I just don't associate with, right? It's like, damn, this motherfucker reminds me of this. Remember, like you guys know this punk motherfucker always talk shit, and then when he got confronted, he was like, "Oh man, I didn't really say that, man. I don't gotta beef with you. I gotta beef with your homie. You misconstrued the whole thing, man, or some shit, you know." Like, come on, bro. He ain't fooling anybody, bro. You're not fooling me, huh? You don't fool me with that bullshit, bro. So we try different songs. I just kind of put it in wherever it lands, wherever it lands. You know what I mean? So yeah, so he's going after. So David Benavidez is now he's going after Bivol, knowing that Bivol is locked in. He's locked horns and shit with Bitter Beef for a trilogy. But like this is common sense, bro. Common fucking sense, bro. Common fucking sense. And he's gonna try to disrupt that, knowing that they're not gonna unlock horns, bro. He ain't fooling anybody, bro. He's just perfect timing to talk shit, going after fighters and got a fighter strip. And you know why? You know why he didn't strip Canelo? Now for everybody else asking, why didn't this happen with Canelo? Why didn't this and that? Because Benavidez he ducked the mandatory before the due date. Before the due date. It never got to that point where it was going to be on Canelo's hands to decide if he's going to get the fight or not. It was all Benavidez had the ball. He fumbled. Fumbalaya Benavidez. Fumbalaya Benavidez, bro. And from now on, I'm just going to call him Fumbalaya Benavidez, bro. Motherfucking Fumbalaya Benavidez had the opportunity to fight Canelo with the golden ticket, bro. That Willy Wonka ticket. Willy Wonka Benavidez, bro. Willy Wonka Fumbalaya Benavidez. Willy Wonka Fumbalaya Benavidez, bro, had an opportunity to fight Canelo with the golden ticket called mandatory. And before the due date, he chickened out. from Belaya Benavidez. He literally chickened out, decided to move up, right? After talking all that shit. Right? And it's not the first time he ducks Bitterbeef. It's not the first time, bro. So basically speaking, David Benavidez is cutting the line. He's cutting the line. And he's now the new email champion, right? Claiming they're ducking him, claiming that people are vacating their titles, too scared to fight him. When it's just all these fallacious, just bullshit lies, bro. No one is ducking him. He's just perfect timing from Belaya Benavidez. Right? He knows exactly when to fumble. He knows exactly when to punt. It's exactly what he's doing. Right? And instead of returning the punt when they punt to him, he takes a knee. He's taking a knee from Belaya Benavidez, bro. That's exactly what he is. Willy Wonka from Belaya taking knee Benavidez. He's taking a knee, bro. Kickoff, boom. Instead of running it back, bro, he's taking a knee. Come on, bro. It's like any other sport, bro. You know, bases fully loaded. Bases fully loaded, right? And 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 the pitch is right down the middle, and the batter steps back, and it's a strike. Strike one. Man, right, bases loaded. Holmes, come on, bring us home, woman. Bring us home. Bring us home. Right, and perfect pitch. You know, fastball down the middle, Holmes. You know, and motherfucker takes a step back. Boom, strike two. Same thing, strike three. Come on, bro. You not even one swing, bro. All that shit. You went up to home base. You had the bat in your hands, bro, and you didn't swing when you had bases loaded. It's like the free throw, Holmes. You know, time is up. No time left on the clock. You're down by 2 points, bro. Well, let's say you're down by 1 point. You're down by 1 point. You got a chance to score two baskets, and you intentionally missed the first one, and you intentionally missed the second one, Holmes. Or a soccer game, Holmes. You know, the last kick of the game, penalty kick, Holmes. The last kick of the game. If you score, you win, Holmes. If you score, you win. And instead of kicking the motherfucker, Holmes, you kick it like a little bitch straight to the hands of the goalie, Holmes. You give it to him. You give it to him, Holmes. Come on, bro. Any sport, any fucking sport. You look at that motherfucker and be like, what the fuck? But for some strange reason, because it's Canelo, it's like, nah, we gotta blame Canelo. And it's ridiculous, bro. It makes no motherfucking sense, bro. Right? So let's talk about the lies, bro. The Benavides lies and shit, right? Number one. Not the biggest lie, just number one, right? Just in no particular order. One of the biggest lies when it comes to Benavides is that Benavides has been Canelo's mandatory for over 3 years. I mean, this got to be the most ridiculous, dumb shit, most stupidest argument I have ever fucking heard, bro. You know, 3 years ago, wasn't he coming back from being stripped from his title? Wasn't he suspended or some shit like that during that time? How the fuck was he a mandatory when he was getting stripped? 3 years ago, he was fighting what, Lemieux? As a matter of fact, wasn't 3 years ago, wasn't Benavidez actually the mandatory for Arthur Bitterbeef? Oh shit, wait a minute. Now wait a minute. Hold up, wait a minute. Wasn't it like 3 years ago David Benavidez the mandatory to fight Arthur Bitterbeef? And Benavidez refused to fight Arthur Bitterbeef? He was the mandatory, he was given the opportunity, and he vacated the shot. Does that sound familiar to you? Very familiar to what happened with Canelo, didn't it? Okay, I see I got some comments right here. I don't know, I can't even pronounce your name. I'm not even going to try, bro. You know, you call it what you will, Holmes. Right? David has dug anyone. David has dug anyone. David had let's just try to say that. Uh, just try to use that in a paragraph or ask somebody. Excuse me, sir. Did you know that David has dunked anyone with a question with an exclamation mark? Excuse me, sir, or ma'am. David has dunked anyone. That shit makes no sense, bro. I don't know, bro. Sullivan is a crooked muff. All right, bro. So, yeah, you're out here like a little kid. No, no, no. He's the one. He's the one. And no facts, no proof. I'm giving you dates, bro. Suleiman said, "Hey, Holmes, it takes 1 year. These are rules, Holmes. Rules that have been established. It takes one motherfucking year. So when Benavidez is at 168, these rules don't apply. But right now that he's stripping Bivol, they do apply. Mm, Explain that shit to me, homie. T T dude, T guy, T bag. I'm just gonna call you T bag, Holmes. Right? Listen, T bag. Explain that shit to me, Holmes. How the rules don't apply at 168 for Benavidez, but at 175 they do apply. I mean, come on, bro. It's fucking ridiculous, bro. It's pathetic. Talking about being lenient with Benavidez here, right? It's just like it's fucking ridiculous, right? So let's talk about these lies, Holmes. Right? Benavidez has been Canelo's mandatory for over 3 years. Bullshit. He was actually Benavidez's mandatory before he was Canelo's mandatory. Remember when Canelo fought Yildirim? Did you know that Yildirim was waiting for Benavidez for over 2 fucking years, bro? Over 2 years, bro. Yildirim was mandatory for over 2 fucking years, bro. How the fuck you're not gonna fight your mandatories for over 2 motherfucking years, Benavidez? Well, Benavidez gets stripped, right? He loses his title. Yildirim is still waiting. He's still the mandatory, right? He's like, hey, hello. I've been waiting here for 2 motherfucking years. When am I going to get my shot? Now Benavidez is stripped. The title is vacant. So the rules are the rules. I'm supposed to fight for this vacant title. Who am I going to fight against? Canelo's like, hey, I just moved up to 168. Give me a shot. Right? Give me a shot. First one to raise his hand was Canelo. Right? So over 3 years ago, no, bro, Benavidez was not mandatory. He was a meme. They were calling him Fat Boy, Doughboy Benavidez. They were calling. I even saw some shit like Benavidez, or because of Fluffy Vitas, just because he was fat, bro. They were just making fun of him 3 years ago. He was no fucking mandatory 3 years ago. He became mandatory when he defeated Caleb Plant, and he was scheduled to be mandatory in March 2024. I'm giving you dates. I'm giving you names. I'm giving you facts. Not like this teabag motherfucker out here. Watch. There's a new comment. I'm pretty sure it's him. Sure it is. What's that? So they're working for Canelo. Oh, yeah, sure. Working for Canelo, but Benavidez getting all the benefits. Yeah, bro. Yeah. Fucking dumbasses out here. I don't want to argue with you, bro. You're killing my mood, Holmes. You're killing my mood, Holmes. Let me take a sip of my fucking wine. You fucking weird ass and shit. Right? So, no, Benavidez has not been Canelo's mandatory for over 3 years. He was stripped 3 years ago. He was coming back and fighting David Lemieux for his first fight, coming back from that suspension. Right? And then along the line, he was given the opportunity to be Benavidez's mandatory, and he ducked it. He fucking ducked it. And then he was given the chance to be Canelo's mandatory, and he ducked it. He fucking ducked it. Right? Another lie is the WBC caters to Canelo, but not Benavidez. Come on, bro. Thanks to T-Bag, I just fucking explained how WBC has been catering to Benavidez. Just think about Canelo. This misconception, caters to Canelo. Okay, at 160, the WBC, they weren't catering to Canelo. They were catering to Jamal Charlo, champion in recess for I don't know how long. And you know why? Because Jamal Charlo was claiming mental issues, right? It was a medical mental issue. Now, I don't know about what part of the country you guys are from, but here in California, we abide by federal law. And in federal law, when you're an employee or when you're representing, or in this case, when you're a champion for a particular sport, like in boxing, where there's another thing called champion in recess, champion interim champions, when there's all these things that have already been established, you could argue to the court and say, hey man, they are violating my constitutional rights, because of some type of mental issue that I had. You know what I mean? So the WBC, they're not gonna fuck around with the fucking federal law. They're not gonna fuck around with federal law. They're not gonna intervene with that. No. So the WBC is like, all right, we're just making champion of Reese's. Give them a year or two. Fuck it. That's more than enough. It'll satisfy the courts. It'll satisfy the fighters. It'll satisfy the mandatory. You know what I mean? So yeah, Canelo couldn't get injured just fight him like that, bro. He couldn't, right? Because Charlo didn't want to fight. So no, Canelo can't just fight anybody. You know what I mean? They try to make him fight. I mean, it's just ridiculous, bro. They don't just cater to Canelo, bro. They fucking cater to every fighter. WBC, that's what they do. That's what they're known for. They protect the fighters. They protect the fucking fighters, bro. Right? And WBC, I mean, they tried to adapt the super champion, like the WBA and WBO, right? Certain other sanctioning bodies, they have a super champion. What is a super champion is? A champion who's already established himself as being the top of the top dog. You know what I mean? Top gunner, the motherfucker who should be unifying instead of fighting mediocre mandatories, right? So they turned him into a super champion. And the WBC, they were the only ones, that were kind of lagging behind, not having a super champion. And people were asking, hey, how come the WBC don't have a super champion? Well, they did. They created a super champion to allow for undisputed fights, right? But instead of calling it super champions, they called it a franchise champion. And then you got Canelo, Lomachenko, Haney, Teofimo Lopez, all these fighters, great fighters, tremendous fighters, given the opportunity by the WBC sanctioning body to become super champions, right? AKA franchise champions. And they did tremendous things. They were able to accomplish undisputed titles, right? But the haters, bro, because one fighter or that you don't like happened to be part of that particular category, that new division of having a super champion, something that is not new to boxing, is not new to boxing. It's something that is very well established in boxing, where WBC champions before that were fighting super champions of other divisions, right? So it's nothing new. But maybe because it's Canelo, or maybe because it's Teofimo, or maybe because it's Devin Haney, it's like, nah, you're not an undisputed champion. You know what I mean? It's like, why? Shut the fuck up, bro. It's like this weird, bro. But yeah, but these super champions in these other divisions, yeah, they're considered, the champions. But the WBC can't recognize their champion, as an undisputed champion. I mean, come on, bro. It's fucking ridiculous, bro. Just the hate, bro. It's retarded, bro. That's why I didn't even want to argue with Teabag, bro. I said he was still in the mood, bro. I don't even want to argue with dumbasses no more, bro. It's just like, I don't want to waste my time, bro. Fucking, it's like, they're not even making any sense, bro. It's not even logical what they're claiming or saying, bro. It's just hate. It's just jealousy, some envy, some bitch ass shit, bro. All right, just damn near retarded, bro. It's just like, so the WC caters to Canelo. Of course, they just don't cater, okay, bro. I just mentioned, bro, how the WBC was forcing Canelo to fight that trilogy against Triple G, and then Canelo didn't want to, so they were stripping him, and so he vacated his title. Yeah, that's not catering to him. Yeah, that's not catering. Canelo wants to fight for the WBC middleweight title. He can't because of Charlo, because he's champion of Reese's. Right? They're not catering to him. They're fighting to cater to Charlo. This whole Benavidez holding him back. You know what I mean? Not making up his mind. So Berlanga has to come in at the last minute because Benavidez is vacating, and there has to be a new fighter for September. Canelo had the contract with the PBC. It was all Humbalaya Benavidez, Humbalaya Benavidez, right? It was no swing Benavidez. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, bro. It's just what's another lie, huh? So Canelo, I meant to put chose or what the fuck? I don't know why I even wrote that, bro. I'm buzzing. Canelo chose. Yeah, I think I put O. O is right next to the I in the keyboard. A little typo. A little typo. I'm human. Yeah. I might look like Canelo, you know what I mean? But I'm human. Canelo chose to fight Mugia and Berlanga over Benavidez. I already explained that. That's bullshit, right? Mugia replaced Jermall Charlo. That's why Mugia came in. You know what I mean? Berlanga replaced Benavidez because Benavidez ducked the mandatory. Plain and simple. Plain and simple, right? Plain and simple. Another lie. Canelo fights who he wants to fight. Well, I kind of just rambled a little bit on how Canelo doesn't just fights who he wants to fight, right? Um, I mean, think about it. Let's see. Let's talk about that. Does Canelo fight who he just wants to fight? That's the most ridiculous fucking comment, what I mean, ever, bro. When people say that he fights who he wants to fight, Canelo fights who he wants. No, he does not, bro. No, he does not. Let's when he joined the PBC was forced him. You know what I mean? A 3 fight deal. You're gonna fight this guy, that guy, and that guy. And if this guy doesn't fight, you got to fight that guy, or that guy. That's not that's not fighting who he wants to fight. Those are negotiations. Those are companies telling Canelo you can pick from these fighters. No, you're not gonna fight another network. No, you're signed to us, buddy. You're gonna fight in house or stablemates. Who do you want? Which one? You know what I mean? But you're not gonna fight outside the stable house. No, think about it. That happened when he was with the Zone, right? When he was with the Zone, why did Canelo um, revoked that multi-million-dollar deal with the Zone? Because the Zone wanted him to fight either Conor McGregor, Jake Paul, or Logan Paul. I can't remember one of those two brothers. McGregor, Paul, and the trilogy against Golovkin. Canelo didn't want those fights. And think about it. He doesn't just fight who he wants to fight. No, they give him a list. They force him to fight these fighters. All right, let's talk about right now with this current contract with Turkey Alakish, right? Turkey Alakish is giving Canelo a contract, and what are those contracts? What are those contracts? For school is kind of like uh, a mandatory fight for Canelo, right? For undisputed, it's technically a mandatory fight. The IBF made it mandatory. They stripped him. Canelo's basically fulfilling that mandatory. It's basically a fight for mandatory, right? But technically speaking, Skull won the title. He's fair and square. He's whatever. But it's a mandatory fight. But Turkey wants to put down that Terence Crawford fight. Remember, Canelo didn't want to fight Terence Crawford. Canelo kept saying over and over, "I'm not going to fight Terence Crawford because I gained nothing from it." Right? It's easy money. I'm going to beat the shit out of him, and everybody's going to criticize me for beating the little dude. And he have nothing to gain and everything to lose. Right? Canelo didn't want to fight. He didn't want the fight, but he's being forced to fight Terence Crawford. Think about it, because that's the fight that's being offered to him by the networks, by promoters, the fans. So it's like Canelo's like, wait a minute, I never wanted to fight this little motherfucker, right? Well, he was very clear. But why is he fighting Crawford? because he doesn't fight who he wants to fight. He's being forced to fight Crawford. And then after Crawford, Turkey says, I have other fights for you. It could be Eubank Jr. And you think Canelo wants to fight Eubank Jr.? No. But why? Think about it. Turkey, why is, and then people are blaming Canelo. Canelo don't want to fight Eubank Jr. But Turkey knows that a fight against Eubank Jr. ends in blood. It'll be a bloody knockout. And he wants to take that bloody knockout memory event and sell it to his people out of Saudi Arabia. He wants the Saudi Arabian folk to experience what it's like to see uh, a tremendous boxing knockout live, right? And then Eubank versus Canelo. Uh, the fans will be there on both sides. Canelo has his fan base. The UK will definitely be tuning in to see Eubank perform, right? So Turkey, he knows what he's doing. So that's a fight that is kind of being forced on Canelo. And as you can see, that the remaining list of fighters, they're blank. So it's still up for grabs. He doesn't. Why doesn't Canelo say just I'm going to fight this guy, that guy? Like, why doesn't Canelo just fill in the blanks? Because he can't fill in the blanks. You know why? Because he doesn't fight who he wants to fight. He's forced to fight who he wants to fight, right? And you got this teabag motherfucker out here, just to continue commenting. So yeah, bro, I just debunked, just pretty much all the narratives. It's just I'm very logical, bro. I'm not sure if I'm just smarter than the average boxing fan, right? But when I hear these boxing fans just talking like idiots, I feel like I don't want to be part of that fucking conversation, bro. He's like, are you that stupid, bro? Are you that stupid, bro? Don't you fucking see, bro, that like Canelo's not at fault here for COVID? Motherfuckers blaming Canelo. Oh, he fought Triple G when he was old. Hey, COVID, bro, COVID, COVID. Canelo was making that deal with Triple G. COVID came through, and then after COVID, he fought him 2 years later. We fought him 2 years later. Well, shit, because it was COVID. Like, damn, bro. It's like, I can't, bro. I can't do it anymore, bro. I can't do it anymore, bro. I can't have conversation with people like that anymore, bro. Yeah, he fought Golovkin when, you know, when he was older 2 years later. COVID, bro. And you tell him that, but still, like, bro, I can't do it anymore, bro. I, I can't do it anymore, bro. I'm a grown ass man, bro. I got a high intellectual capacity, bro. I'm not, I can't have retarded conversation, with retarded people, bro. I just can't, bro. I'm not getting paid for this shit, bro. I'm not uh, I'm not a medical therapist, so this is my hobby, bro. It just kills my mood. Instead of me having fun out here and talking logically, to people about, the facts, I gotta argue with people about fucking just dumbass fucking lies, bro. Just stupid shit, bro. Right? Like, let me show you what I mean. Like, this one teabag guy that was commenting, right? He's out here bullshit, right? Okay, bullshit, whatever. But he has no argument. David has ducked anyone. Yeah, whatever the fuck that means, right? And his other argument: Suleiman is a crooked motherfucker. How is he crooked, bro? How is this motherfucker crooked? How's no nothing to back it up? Just a dry ass claim. He's a crooked. How is Marisa Suleiman crooked, bro? By giving the Charlos, all the time in the world as champions and Reese's. How? By allowing Benavidez to duck Canelo and still giving an opportunity to fight, to strip Bivol after he ducked Bitter Beef. I mean, how, bro? He's fucking just, it's just retarded, bro. You guys are just retarded, bro. Look at this shit. Canelo won't allow a Mexican American to take his belts. What the fuck do you mean, bro? He won't allow a Mexican American to take his belts. That's, bro, man. So he fought Munguia, an undefeated fighter. Munguia, for a while, a lot of people were saying, "Why does he fight Munguia? He's scared to fight a Mexican. How come Canelo doesn't want to fight a Mexican?" That whole narrative about Canelo not wanting to fight a Mexican was all about Munguia, and Benavidez was nowhere in the picture during this time. Remember, Benavidez was a meme. He had got stripped. He had gotten suspended. During this time, people were making fun of him. Nobody was talking about Benavidez, but everybody was talking about Munguia, right? So they were talking about Munguia. So they're talking about how Canelo doesn't want to fight a Mexican. That conversation had nothing to do with Benavidez. Well, he fought a prime Mexican. He beat the shit out of him, right? So it's just, man, people are just fucking dumb, bro. Hasn't. What does that mean, bro? Oh man, bro. Oh no, bro. Don't come back to my channel, bro. I just do this for a hobby, bro. I can't have these fucking conversation with you dumbass motherfuckers, bro. If you know how I am, bro, why the fuck you even kind of comment if I'm just gonna talk to you this way, bro? Right? It's just I can't do it anymore, bro. I can't, bro. I can't have dumbass conversations with dumbass fans, bro. Uh, it's Canelo. Well, how, bro? How? Explain that shit to me, bro. How, bro? Fuck. I can't do it anymore, bro. I'm ranting right now. I'm venting. Um, just yeah, bro. I want to have fun with my hobby, but I just can't. It frustrates me, bro. It gives me a headache to have these conversations with grown folk, bro, grown ass men. And it's like, why are you doing this, bro? And like I said earlier, bro, I think it's just racism, bro. I think it's racism. I think they just can't stand to see a Mexican with the throne. I can't. I don't know why else would it be. Like like all you guys can't be that fucking retarded, you know? Like all you motherfuckers can't be that fucking dumb, bro. Like there has to be some personal agenda here. What's the personal agenda? You guys gotta continue lying and just trying to change the facts, taking words out of context. It's just like why, bro? It's like I'm just gonna say racism. Yeah, I think I don't know, bro. I don't know. So does anybody else want to comment, bro? Don't be scared to comment, huh? Comment what you gotta say, bro. Take it like a man. At least Teabag out here, he was able to fucking drop some comments, comment after comment, and he kept hearing me criticize his comments. He wasn't scared, homes, to drop his comments. I'll give him that, homes. At least he wasn't scared. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just I love boxing, bro. It's just social media is kind of funny like that sometimes. Also, it kind of makes boxing not enjoyable or memorable when you're trying to shut it out. You know what I mean? It's just like that nagging ex. Keeps trying to call you, showing up at odd hours of the day. You know what I mean? It's just like it's just pointless, useless. You know what I mean? It's just like just a fucking headache. Kick rocks, bitch. You know? Yeah. So, but ladies and gentlemen, just a quick review of the main topics of tonight. Those main topics of tonight were how Mauricio Suleiman pretty much broke down the WBC rules, plain and simple. They're very clear, and they've been there for quite a while. Nothing new. So he broke it down. He literally said, "Hey, you know what I mean? If you got anybody to blame Benavides. Don't blame WBC. Don't blame Canelo. Don't blame Samson Lukowicz. Don't blame the WBC. Don't blame this person. Don't blame that person. There's only one person to blame, and that's Benavidez. Clearly, ducked Canelo after requesting two extensions to make up his mind, only to vacate, and he just kept talking shit. And he went after a fighter who was, you know, locked against another fighter for a trilogy. Very, you know, plain and simple common sense type of a scenario where that was gonna happen regardless, and this is the fighter who David Benavidez is after next, and because of that, he's stripping Bivol, and he's making it seem like Bivol's ducking Benavidez that's far from the truth. The truth, indeed, is that Bivol and Beterbiev are fighting for a trilogy, for an undisputed trilogy, and the only factor here is that Benavidez stripped Bivol with the fallacious claim only to clout chase the undisputed fighters, just like he did Canelo. You know what I mean? And I also talked about how David Benavidez is responsible for stripping Bivol. I just talked about that right now. David Benavidez is cutting the line. He is now the email champion and is pursuing his second email title. Uh, just cowardly, just very Demetrius Andre like. You know what I mean? And I talked about the lies that David Benavidez lies that we are very much aware of. How people had this bullshit lie claim that Canelo uh, had Benavidez as mandatory for over 3 years. And I talked about how that was far from the truth. If anything, Benavidez was Beterbiev mandatory, and he was coming back from being stripped, suspended, and so on. Right. So uh, WBC caters to Canelo, but not Benavidez. Sure, that's exactly what the haters want you to believe. But when you look at the facts, it's the other way around. These other fighters have been catered to in order to place them as opposition, for other champions at a convenient time or place. Right. For example, how the Charlo brothers were champions in recess for such a long time uh, because, for example, they had that fight against Canelo. Now Benavidez, you know, lost his titles, was able to come back, become a mandatory fighter for Beterbiev, even though he was too scared to take up that offer. He was still given an opportunity to be the mandatory fighter for Canelo. Ducks that opportunity against Canelo, and now he's claiming to be the boogeyman, the monster, the Mexican monster, right? So it's just bullshit, right? Just bullshit. Does Canelo cater? So does the BBC cater to Canelo? No, I think it's still the way around. The WBC caters to all these other fighters, and they try to force Canelo to fight this person or that person, as they've done in the past. Canelo chose to fight Munguia and Berlanga over Benavidez. That's another lie, right? That's simply because one of the Charlo brothers, he took a knee, and just like Benavidez, take a knee from Belaya Benavidez. You know what I mean? It's just uh, refused to fight Canelo for the mandatory, and that's why Berlanga was put in that particular position as a late replacement, basically, right? Canelo fights who he wants to fight. Well, of course not. But I did talk about how Canelo has been, ordered to fight this guy or that guy. He's been stripped as well because he's not given free reign on who he wants to fight. The IBF has stripped him before. The WBC has also stripped Canelo before, and under contract with the Zone, he was given a certain list of opposition who Canelo refused to fight. That's why he was pretty much was stripped and shit from the IBF as well, right? So not only that, but when Canelo joined the PBC, he was given the list of fighters that he had to fight, both Charlos as well as uh, Benavidez, according to Samson Lukowicz, Benavidez' own manager. And then I did talk about how Canelo at the same time is also signed now with Turkey Alakish, and he has a contract, very lucrative contract, where he's going to be fighting opposition that he's being forced to fight, right? Because this is what Turk Alakish wants him to fight. So does he want to fight Crawford? No, but he's being forced to fight Crawford. So Canelo does not fight who he wants to fight. That's far from the truth, right? Canelo might say that he does what he wants to, but not necessarily. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. Right now, it is 2 a.m. here in California, and it is time for a dude to snooze, to catch some Z's, to go to sleep, to relax and enjoy the weekend. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I apologize, somewhere along the show, there was a little brief interruption where for some reason the microphone went cut off and shit, but it is what it is. So, but thank you, everybody. Once again, it's a dude in the house. Get you in the next round. Peace.